Today we talk to Aakash Guglani, manager of Digital India Foundation, a no-profit organization that aims at digital inclusion in India. Akash knows the digital public infrastructure of India like Aadhaar, UPI, and the ONDC inside out, and has also made policy level recommendations on it. In this conversation, Akash tells us how ONDC, or the Open Network for Digital Commerce, will be a game changer for small, medium, as well as big businesses. Let's head straight to the Q&A with Akash to know more. So, Akash, you've studied ONDC. How do you see ONDC right now? I mean, it was launched with a lot of fanfare, right? There was a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz. And given that the greatest of minds were behind ONDC, coming from the UPI background, are you satisfied with the way the ONDC has proceeded so far?
I think, thank you first of all, Priti, for calling me. Uh, yes, it has. I think because the success story of UPI was such an important part of, let's say, ONDC's kind of formulation itself, that I think we are happy the way it has been accepted by the stakeholders. Most people, let's say, payment aggregators on it, most banks are on it. We do see some sort of consumer demand coming up on ONDC, so that's a kind of a good let's say signs for let's say larger success of this kind of network system. Let's say we call it digital public infrastructure. We already have Aadhaar, UPI, now we have ONDC, and as we have ONDC, we will build some sort of a credit also system over it. So yes, we are satisfied, but obviously a lot of things to do. UPI was easier thing to do because you had the information collateral very less. You just need three, four kinds of information criteria. You need a payment person one, payment person B, the intermediate bank, and let's say overall architecture. In ONDC, you need a little bit more complications. You need to have order delivery, return, grievance redressals. So it's a little bit complicated to build. And that's why you need to have some sort of, uh, let's say, meeting of minds, some sort of penetration of stakeholders to come in. So that's why it's a little bit complicated to take time. Let's remember UPI 2016 to 2018, 19, there was no much uptake. But after 2019, 2020, you saw this massive uptake that you have 11 crore transactions. So right now also ONDC would see 40,000 kind of transactions daily. So that it will peak in 2, 3 years. So any good product development takes 3, 4 years to let's say uh, some sort of consolidation happen. So I think it's in the early growth stage, but we are hopeful for great success.
The online real-time transactions in India are like, the highest compared to even China and India. So that's a huge potential there. For ONDC to really reach out to that particular set of people, what needs to be, what factors or what impediments need to be ironed out, according to you?
First of all, I think let's say some numbers. We have 360 million kind of unique users on UPI. As per some, let's say consulting reports, we have let's say e-retailers or some people who shop online are like 180 to 190 million. And so we have this gap of, let's say, reaching 320 million. And let's say if the UPI numbers we believe in, they're already going up and up and up. So if they penetrate to, let's say, level 500 million users, so you have this growth path from 180 million to, let's say, 500 million. So, and 180, 190 million is totally private led. You have the big platform. So they could not penetrate. So let's say penetration rate of e-commerce is 7 to 8%. And in US, in China, you have 20, 30% penetration. So we know in India that is not working because still offline kind of retail works a lot. So UPI broke that kind of phenomena because the digital public infrastructure zero cost. So because India is a unique society, the price differential is totally different. You needed some sort of public infrastructure, digital tech, let's say intervention. So ONDC aim is to get to that. How do you bridge from 180, 200 million people to, let's say, 500 million? And not by prohibitive kind of marketplaces, 20, 25% commission, but let's say less than 10%, less than 5% kind of commission space so that a local vendor can get onboarded. So that's the larger kind of structure. Obviously, there might be problems here that what let's say we have to understand why let's say private platforms, private marketplaces could not go to let's say major kind of spaces. Is it the structural reasons? Are there what the is the availability of tech. Let's say internet was the issue, penetration. We have, let's say, internet penetration is 47%. If it increases 60%, will that help? So that was one of the major kind of uh, larger context setting for ONDC. If we are able to do these things well, like which you did with UPI, that there's a market ecosystem coming up, there are private players, and there's also, let's say, people's participation. Uh, let's say a chai wala or vegetable vendor are using UPI. Will this similarly use ONDC? Our hypothesis is yes, if you make it easily comprehensible. That's why you will not build the UI for it. You will build the network, like in UPI. Google Pay come in, Phone Pay, you have Portal Bank or any banks that can come up. Same way in ONDC, we are building the architecture. You have, let's say, great opportunity for startup. You can start your own buy applications. Or let's say you can start your own logistics app. So if the stakeholder and market ecosystem comes in, I think ONDC will be successful to go to that 500 million as UPI did. And we are also, let's say, ensuring how can you build up that grievance redressal mechanism, the returns mechanism. That's a complicated story and it's difficult to do, but we are ready. I think the system, the way it is aligned, the people who are leading it, I think we have ecosystem builders like traditional FMCG company, people who are in the board of directors of ONDC. You have technologists, you have the people who have done investment deals, and you have people from, let's say, SIDB, you have people from, let's say, different banks. So you have that kind of stakeholder design by initiation. So that would help. And I hope that's the because the design is well, the policies, the government is supporting it. And I think just we just need the market to get deepened and ONDC can put it together.
I think when you talk about UPI, I feel it was a different situation altogether because the
Yeah,
pandemic and demonetization really propelled it into
yeah.
another, stratosphere. How can, do you think that can be replicated I mean, you don't want to wish something like that,
Yeah.
but how does one push people really into getting into this architecture?
Market is pushing it. Prithvi, the point is, you have, let's say, right now, private food aggregator or let's say cab aggregators charging 20-25%. And I think there is recently you had some podcast where members from traditional kind of food outlets like Fuzzy or Social are already saying that 55% of the margins go to their food aggregators kind of for discovery, discounting, and that kind of cataloging. So 55% margins are unsustainable for one market, for the ecosystem. So you need to have some sort of intervention. If you don't do it, you will see monopolization, which no one wants. We have such a big kind of restaurant, food aggregator, retail businesses who are offline right now, who want to get digital, who want to
Hmm.
empower themselves, but don't want to do it by 20-25% payment of commissions. It's remember, it's totally prohibitive. It's restrictive. They can't do it. They will be effectively eliminated if you don't do something about it. There's a market demand for ONDC. How do we fix it? That's also a kind of a lot of market friction. How will the incentives will be aligned? The policy is aligned. You have the architecture aligned. You just need that kind of gap where market comes towards it. There's a demand and market fit. The product fit is already there. So you just need penetration. UPI showed that if you make it, let's say, like a public infrastructure, the costs are almost zero. You will see adoption. Now the question is, will that adoption be sustainable? That we all have to come together as market players, as people in the ecosystem. Let's say people in the media, people in the private equity, people in private companies, government. How do you ensure that the infrastructure is open for everyone, but people who are building on the infrastructure can make money? So the question is not that infrastructure should not be there, which ONDC is building. It's how do you make sure you build over it. So let's say a classic example is you want to have highways. How do you ensure that vendors on the sides of the highways are also making money by having a lot of traffic? So if ONDC drives the traffic, if you see like UBI numbers, you will ensure that the players who are building over ONDC are making money. So let's say the purpose right now is to ensure you have 200 million, 300 million people over ONDC. And if you have that kind of numbers, which we are expecting, because the design is based on that principle, you will see people building sustainable products out of it, sustainable businesses. And it's the market demand. You can't pay 25-30% commissions. That's unsustainable. So you need to have some alternative, and ONDC is one of them. And maybe a new entrepreneur comes in and tries something different. We are all open for it. It's not a competition against private platforms. It's ensuring that private innovation works on a public infrastructure.
I think it's also to do with awareness, frankly.
Yeah,
Today, I think every other person is on GPay or, is on
yeah.
UPI. But a lot of people aren't aware of a facility within, Paytm
Yes.
to go through, right? How do you clog that particular gap?
I think ONDC is making a lot of efforts. You can see there is some sort of marketing efforts, outreach efforts, which is like being deployed by the ONDC. They are organizations. We work as advocacy firms and think tanks to to ensure people that they can come over and experience ONDC. And also remember, as different applications come on, they will also have their own outreach efforts. That's the interesting aspect of ONDC. We don't need to market with network. The private players on it will market themselves. That why don't you use ONDC or something to my Paytm, or let's say PhonePe or Magic Pin or Spice Money or banks. You can use ONDC in banks. You can use on logistic apps. But why don't you use, let's say, any logistic company that I can give you those services? Well, I'm in Madhya Pradesh. Why don't you use that? And also remember, it's right now live in 9 cities. It's in beta testing 400 cities. So it's already building. So right now it's also early stages. We don't expect people to know because it's also we're rolling it out. And most, let's say, as we have more, let's say, pin codes covering, you will see a lot of traction also. Because remember, traditional players are in. PhonePe is already in with pin code, with their own kind of thing. You have Paytm. The traditional players do see value. You see Microsoft coming. PepsiCo is on it. So if you have traditional players, FMCG players coming on, they know the value of it. So just imagine, PepsiCo is here, so they have a full vendor system, millions of people. They can market it. That why don't you do online kind of ordering to us, vendor kind of. So we have vendor onboarding efforts, we have customer onboarding efforts, and recently I think there's also efforts of campus. How do you ensure students, college students, know about that they can transact, make food ordering on, or do some sort of electronics on that, or you can order coffee on that. So I think it's that's happening. I think, but your point is right. It's not at that level that people know UPI, but you can just imagine, Prithvi, 2018 UPI. No one knew UPI. I think only a few people like us who were very tech enthusiasts were doing UPI. And other people, and after I think after pandemic and that triggered people to use it, but it was a let's say irreversible change. You don't want to go back to the area when you were not using UPI. So as soon as get more penetration in ONDC, you will see people uh, staying there because it's effectively very cost effective, and the system needs it. You cannot pay 30% commission as seller. As consumers, you pay greater choice. What's wrong?
Recently, the B2B segment was also launched, right?
Yeah.
Have you studied the kind of transactions that have been going on there? And
Mhm.
what do you foresee, you know, say in the short term and the medium term, as far as ONDC is concerned, in terms of payments and transactions?
I think B2B is the greatest kind of space here to explore in ONDC. I'll tell you why. Just imagine you are a logistics partner in Madhya Pradesh, Jabalpur, and let's say you are a buyer application based out of Gurgaon, and you want to, let's say you're a consumer in, let's say in Jabalpur. Now, as a buyer application, you have access to the Jabalpur customer. They can go to your application. But how will you fulfill it? There's a classic B2B play here. Do you have your own logistics fleet for Jabalpur? No, you will not. You will have partnerships. So it's a great partnership play. So if you are a traditional, let's say, bus vendor, or people who are, let's say, who have small trucks, small kind of warehouses, they can partner with these buyer applications. And there's a classic. And also remember, everything is digital. I have your digital footprint. So there's a kind of information collateral I have. So on banks, you can easily ensure that those people can get credit. Logistic partners can get credit. You can also see kind of ecosystem play where you have a small fleet of let's say delivery partners. You can deploy them, and everything is digitized. So you can go to banks, you can go to MFFCs to get a lot of credit. So interestingly, we always say you have ONDC. We are also building open credit enablement network. And this is account aggregator. So you will fix the credit problem of India. Because remember in MSMEs, you don't know banks always face, because there's no information collateral. I don't know how to give you credit because your total business is informal. With this, because let's say commissions are less than 5%, you want to get onboarded online. Your collateral will be there, so it's a great credit uptake which is going to happen. That's a classic B2B play which ONDC will do. So that's one area. Let's say you are a buyer application, you want to get into, let's say, some totally different kind of area of domain. Right now, you have in Amazon or something, you have a closed loop ecosystem. You could not make partnerships. You have to go through mediated by Amazon or everything. Either you get fulfillment by Amazon, warehouses by Amazon, or cataloging by Amazon. Right now, you can do partnerships across the ecosystem, and you have a common kind of public infrastructure. You know, if your order data, let's say it's totally digitally cataloged, and it's live tracking. So let's say my services are right now in Jabalpur, in let's say Ludhiana, or in let's say Tirupati. That can be that there's also data play here. So let's say if
Yeah.
you're a data analysis firm, these MSMEs, these new firms will require your data analysis. Whether can the partnership with the Ludhiana logistics person might work, or maybe bigger logistic person who has, let's say, multi-state kind of logistics, that might work for you. Your data will help us. They are delivering 2 days, but they deliver one day. So a lot of B2 play is going to happen in this specific category, and also you will see a lot of marketing firms coming in. How do you ensure which category of product should be listed there? You remember in the offline data, you used to know the packaging, that if you put some, let's say perhaps Coke or something in that's the shelf kind of thing.
Yeah.
You will also see online shelving happening. And that's a lot of kind of a B2B play there for let's say analytical firms, or marketing firms. So a lot of what do you imagine, let's say offline retail, you will see multiples of it in online retail with a lot of data, with a lot of credit uptake. Yes, I know.
I think one of the major reasons why ONDC was kind of, brought about in the first place was the idea of discoverability, right? I mean,
Yes,
as
yes.
compared to market aggregators. But there is another, issue of another type of discoverability that companies will have to really, kind of try to get at, even on a platform like ONDC, right?
Yeah. I think right now you can have policy over it. Do you know Amazon's policy? Do you know Flipkart's policy of discoverability? No, it's totally opaque. I don't know. You used to have firms that you don't know social media play, or you don't know how e-marketplaces work. Because there is no policy. Because they're private firms, you can't even expect it.
Yeah.
Maybe, and remember, if you're top ranked, you don't know whether they'll have their own product like this. You saw in
Yeah.
certain cases, if your one food item is really selling in a pin code, and another, say you see a cloud kitchen coming in, which is like owned by the platform. So your data was used against you. So
Mm.
initially, you were making something really interesting. The aggregator knew it, came over and started their own thing. In effect, it's elimination strategy, because there's no fairness, there's no transparency. With ONDC, there'll be because it's public infrastructure. Everyone knows the data. Everyone is involved in data making. Everyone is involved in data analysis. So that discoverability will be fairer, will be reasonable. It will be bound by some regulations. You can't do
Okay.
this. You can't have a paid kind of ranking. One of the important part of one strategy paper is, how do you rank? Should you rank geographically? You don't know right now. Sometimes just ordering a simple, let's say, a suit or something that's coming from Hyderabad, from Delhi. Why would you do that? You are not using the Delhi local vendors. There has to be some sort of geolocation. There has to be some sort of remote kind of deliverability, so that the local vendors, uh, are empowered in this space. And also it's e-commerce. So you can obviously have people from Hyderabad. But the ranking has to be fair to the local vendors. Otherwise, you are affecting the local economy, which these platforms did. You had warehouses outside, and you stop buying from local vendors. That's also the empowerment game we are uh, which you're seeing, and that discoverability is the core factor. Can you eliminate millions of, let's say we have 10, 12 million neighborhood stores, 40 million plus MSMEs. You have to empower them. You can't, they're the biggest employment generation, or let's say industries for India. You can't eliminate them by just having a, let's say, or this private sector led e-marketplaces system.
Okay. So you mentioned, OCEN, right? If you can just in a little gist, can you explain that to so many startups or so many other smaller enterprises that might be watching, and how that will help them get credit?
So, so Dustin, right now, let's say if you're a small, let's talk basically in very layman terms. If you're a, let's say, small vendor right now who's a grocer in, let's say, in Lakshmi Nagar in Delhi, or let's say in Jorbag in Delhi or something. Right now, we don't have your data. If you go to a bank, they will just ask, maybe you have some sort of aggregated GST data, that I do this kind of accumulated sales, that kind of thing. But just imagine, uh, you have some sort of they have no data about what you are selling, what kind of catalog do you sell. You also don't have your data, whether you have some off the top of your mind that this soap sells a lot in this season. You have that kind of thing. So you can't officially take formal credit over it. So if you take credit, it will be exorbitant charges because I don't have your data. Classic economic theory of, let's say, credit is, I don't have your data, so I will charge you more because you're a risky asset to me. Right now, with open credit, because everything will be cataloged, you are totally digitized in ONDC because the costs are almost nil because it's public infrastructure. Your catalogs will be totally on open display. You know each and every time which product is selling at what time to what customer, which just classic. You remember why these big firms used to play, because they have data of every each and every transaction of the consumer. They understand consumer behavior really well. And as a local vendor understands consumer behavior through, let's say, classic, regularity, they visit, that kind of thing. What if you can do it online? And we provide you, so remember, the ONDC will provide you cataloging, you will provide you discoverability, you provide them all the open source APIs, which they just need to, do their business skills and come over online. There are different kind of seller onboarding kind of vendors in India which are doing help to get onboarded on ONDC. You can get that kind of, let's say, open credit because I know no, I right now I know what kind of sales do you do in a month, what kind of sales do you do in, let's in a day, which are your, let's say, highest customers, and let's say, so you have that kind of information collected. So because you have this open credit, because remember, it's open because it's ONDC. With Amazon, you don't know. You might have some numbers which Amazon is giving you, or let's say other, let's say any e-marketplaces. With the ONDC, because it's a public platform, you will get every number. And they are every, let's say, private platform is obligated to share it. So that's why if you have that kind of information collateral, it's easier for bank to give you loan, and for, let's say, easier and cheaper rates, because now you're not risky. I know you totally, like you know yourself, and you can negotiate on, let's say, easier terms. That's the important part. So that would help in enabling. Yes, open credit enabled network is that thing. How do you make sure that that is totally workable?
Okay. Um, I don't want to play bad cop, but then, I
You
have
can.
to ask you this. How do you go beyond the basic fear of evaluating the credit risk or the credit worthiness of a venture,
Hmm.
especially in a startup sort of a situation.
Yeah.
How can you, even if you get a platform like that, how can ONDC really help you overcome that innate fear?
See, that's a conversation to have with bankers, that why do you, what's stopping them to, let's say, give more credit. And also, if it becomes a priority sector lending, remember, we are not right now. We also will have farmers onboarded. You can have farmer produce and everything
Yeah.
coming over ONDC. So that's always great empowerment. I know what's your stock levels, what are you selling to, let's say, whom. So that data was totally lied on by, let's say, the other commission agents. You had middlemen who were giving you that data. Right now, you have direct data. So the access to data itself empowers you to, or also make you greater deals. Because I know you, because data is verified. Because it's on ONDC, it's a stakeholder play. It's everyone is coming together to build the design system, and ensure that the data is robust. So that's the important component for you to give credit, because you know the data is robust. It's not data coming from, let's say, commission agent, or even myself. Why are you trusting me? You can trust the platforms, that this is the data which I'm doing, and then consistently I'm doing, and you have some sort of authentication of it. So that's the most important part of ONDC. that you do this data gathering in a very, let's say, transparent, fair, and inclusive manner, which other systems were not doing because they were totally private. They were doing for their own profit. ONDC is not profit led. ONDC is discoverability led. ONDC is empowering led. How do you ensure those people who are at the fag end can use these services to empower themselves? And for ONDC, it's just enablement. You enable the ecosystem, and the ecosystem comes over. And so, as a bank, so what I'm helping a banker or it's a creditor that you always said you never had information collateral. I'm providing you that. Then why are you charging them more? If you check the risk on the merits of the data, and you judge it on let's say financial data, whether the ratios are working, whether their sales turnover ratios are working, and you give them on those basis. Because data is not available, we are giving you that play where data is available. Now you give them credit on the, and obviously if it's farmers, priority lending will come in, government regulation will come in. So they cannot be hobnobbing about it. If it's women-led startups, yes, you have to have some concession with government. It's a regulatory welfare state we are building. So we know the data now that can work out also. So what's stopping a startup? If you trust your data, if you're compliant, if you're doing a fair play business, you should get credit. Which is it's beneficial for the bank, it's beneficial for you, it's also beneficial for the government and everyone because now it's reliable data.
Okay. Is there a number as to how many disbursements are happening? Is there data on that?
I think that we can't share. That's ONDC's way, let's say, and also OCEN is totally different.
What do you think is the biggest impediment to ONDC or OCEN right now?
I think an ONDC would be how do you make sure it's sustainable? You should never go to that 20-25% path because we know it's unsustainable. And also the uptake. You need to have those 300 million, 250 million people over it. So to ensure that people want to come in and it's a great opportunity. So it's a more demand driven. You have to have that kind of adoption for it to happen. And it may take us while, but because the proposition is good, the market conditions are here, people are demanding it. I think it's more time constraint. How do you ensure you're available in let's say most pin codes in India and on most applications? And traditional people are not competing with it; they're complementing it, like in UPI. You don't see Visa, Mastercard, competing with it. UPI will help the user. Let's say a user of UPI can have Visa and Mastercard. You have, I have it. It's not a competition; it's complementation. It's deep complementation. With ONDC also, you need to have that e-commerce market players will have their spaces, cab aggregators will have their spaces, e-commerce aggregators, the food aggregators will have their spaces. But the only is to ensure the market has become more, let's say, cost effective and more, let's say, helpful and let's say it helps the consumer adopt to the digital ecosystems, which everyone wants. It's beneficial for everyone. So the impediment is you need more people digitally. So good, I think the momentum is already high on internet penetration, while ownership, we already have that. Uh, you need some sort of awareness, like you said, outreach, should people know. Some sort of training has to go in. And we are at the ONDC, I think they are cognizant of it. They are going and outreaching to farmer producer organizations, to let's say local chapters of FICCI and business organizations to get some sort of, and it requires 18 to 24 months for let's say ecosystem to understand. It's an easy way to do it. It's the only way. It's a better way to get onboarded on ecosystem. So that's kind of outreach and the consumer adoption. That's the two major kind of impediments right now. You have the consumer adoption, which is like 300 million, and the second is we have the outreach. Even if you have the adoption, do people know about it?
Finally, what do you see the potential of ONDC and OCEN going forward? In terms of statistics, if I can get a sense of, how do you see that playing out? And also, what are your learnings from the study that you've done? On
I think
a Yeah.
our learning is that India is let's say first class in digital public infrastructure. No one is doing is this kind of disruption. No, it is totally sui generis of to India. No one has tried it. Either you have public platforms or in China, or let's say state-led platforms, or you have totally private platforms like Walmarts, the Amazons of the world, who have disrupted e-commerce. Or you have traditional kind of, you can say semi-feudal systems where everything is disaggregated. No one has tried to, bring the, let's say, private innovation with public infrastructure. So that's a kind of a with UPI also it has given us confidence. With Aadhaar it has given us confidence that we can do it. We can do it in cost-effective manner, and we can do it at a scale which is sustainable. Right now, our plan is to have, let's say, 100 billion transactions in a month for UPI. So you're building the architecture for it. So if you're making the payment architecture for it, we can have the larger tech architecture for ONDC. That's the let's say larger plan for us in next few years to ensure that DPI becomes the major kind of economic growth engine. Remember, right now, software industry gives us $1 billion or something, uh, or some numbers. How do you ensure you use your DPI to reach 5 trillion economy? Because if everything gets digitized, digital economy becomes a major tool for empowerment. Why can't you use it, your own software skills, your own, let's say, core IT services skills to empower your own people? So in that way, ONDC, OSIN, all these initiatives are like building on Indian core strengths of software technology, great public welfare system. Remember,
There have been some, people who've also questioned the whole data privacy issue in ONDC.
you see, you will have concerns. The point is, should people have concerns on data? Why should not? We have a fundamental right of data privacy, which Supreme Court has given. But interestingly, in a democratic setup, you go through the parliamentary processes, you go through media criticism, you go through consultative process. And are we the best in the world? No, but we always try to be best. So I think in keeping in that larger international context, local context, our kind of data privacy is the optimum. I'm not saying this is the best. You can always strive towards the best. It's optimal. It can always be improved. Why not? You have parliamentary process to improve it. You have startups to improve it. You have the courts to enforce your any kind of violation. And you have activists. You have media professionals. Should flag it. Should I think with Aadhaar, this just imagine Aadhaar has gone through so much of scrutiny. Has any kind of Facebook, Meta went through that kind of scrutiny initially? You have the scrutiny from the parliament. You have scrutiny from the consultative process. You have scrutiny from the courts. And only after that it was passed. It had to go through all those processes. In same way, it took us 7, 8 years to get a data privacy law. It has gone through so much of deliberations in parliament. So many committees, different committees came about. So much of consultative process. So you can only follow the process. Will the outcome always be ideal? Maybe, maybe not. But you have to trust the process. And I think we have done in a democratic system what we could do. All the consultative process, the parliamentary scrutiny, the judicial scrutiny, the kind of consultative civil society scrutiny. And we have passed through that, and then you have a law. And I think you may have concerns, but the processes have been followed. And can more be followed? Why not? But you have to ensure the ecosystem is ready for it. Everyone is ready to take those policies in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just the tip of the iceberg as far
Yeah.
as ONDC is concerned. Thank you so much, Akash. Thank you.